Oh, that Vinland Saga episode, you guys. I just, Vinland Saga is my top three favorite manga of all time. It was like number eight, and then as the manga progressed, I just liked it more and more. Now it's number three. The anime itself wasn't really in my top 10 anime because there just wasn't enough Vinland Saga yet to consider it. But I think as well as season two has been adapted and how perfectly they've been able to capture these moments, both humorous and intense, and then absolutely, truly tragic, and even expand on those moments like in the previous episode. I really gotta say that now Vinland Saga, the anime, is in my top 10 anime too. I haven't figured out quite where yet, but it's this is incredible. Not to mention, this is one of my favorite arcs in all of manga. And as it builds up to its climax, we're getting the stepping stones to getting there. I really got to say that they have treated it with such care and respect and just meticulous detail that I really couldn't ask for more. Like, I know that some people dislike a few things that they did in the anime, a few of the anime only things, or how they portrayed Einar in the beginning or whatever. But I gotta say, for me personally, my personal preferences, this is great. We are getting insanely great peak content right now, and I know that might be cringe to say, but like, I think this is one of the glorious ages of storytelling told through anime within Vinland Saga. Maybe I'm just jerking it off too hard. I don't know what it is, but to me, this episode was incredible, and this episode was incredibly tragic as well. So we're going to get into talking about that. If you're following along in the manga, we are in book 7, and this episode adapted. I noticed actually something interesting. It adapted chapters 87 and 88 of the manga from the title page here. But I noticed we have, let's see, 1921, 2, 3. We have 6 episodes left, and there's actually 12 chapters left of this volume, which would be pretty much the end and conclusion of this entire arc. So we're probably going to get roughly exactly 2 chapters adapted for the rest of the anime. So if you want to kind of predict what the episodes are going to be if you're going along with the manga, we pretty much have 6 episodes left, 12 chapters left, 2 chapters per episode. We're going to reach the conclusion of the slave arc. But the main crux of this episode, of course, is what happens to Arnid and the psychology of the character Kettle and what he comes to after everything in his life is being torn and ripped away from him. Now, as the last episode concluded, we were left with a lot of mystery as far as, did Snake survive being choked out? We also had Thorfinn and Einar, who are now proven to have helped Arnid in her plot to escape and help Garter. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, when Garter passed away, we had pretty much all of Snake's men, all of the security of the farm surrounding Arnid while she's in the carriage. There's no possible way she was getting out of that. And so here, not only are we getting the aftermath of that, but we're also getting the mixing of the second plot with Canute on his way to the farm to take it over by force from Kettle, who, if he refuses to give the farm to them, and Kettle, of course, coming back after being embarrassed by Omar basically making them treasonous, in what he did, which was all a plot by Canute to begin with, and Torgil just reveling in the idea of facing off against the king and entering into this great battle. But Kettle himself, we have found out that even though Kettle has this reputation of being Iron Fist Kettle, this really hardened warrior, that he's actually, I'm not going to use the word soft, I'm going to use the word weak. And his weakness leads to a lack of good quality leadership skills, which he needs to have in order to be the head of this farm. There was glimpses of this before all throughout the arc, and I like the juxtaposition of where we're at with Kettle now. And I don't think it's really a shift in character, if somebody would think that, or that he like suddenly changed and now all of a sudden he's a maniac or something. I think there are clues to this kind of littered along the way that if you followed them up to this point, I think what Kettle does makes sense for his character. Because in the very beginning, of course, we get this idea that Kettle might actually be a nice slave owner. Like, let's put it, the way that it was. Slavery was more commonplace. It's not necessarily because he's a slave owner that immediately means that he's just a horrible person. I mean, yes, it would be in what we understand of the world, but as things were back then and it was so commonplace, well, maybe, he's a bit lenient, maybe he's takes good care of them. maybe he's actually a good, genuine dude. When he brings Einar to the farm, he mentions that, hey, if you guys work this area and you basically work enough to where you buy back the amount that I paid for you, then you could, potentially become free. I would be willing to free you guys as well, or you guys could actually work on the farm as farmhands and actually be employed, continue to do your job, but actually be compensated this time, and all of these things. So you begin to think that Kettle might be not so bad of a dude. He just has a really large farm to take care of. It's just easier to get slaves, whatever. But then you start to see little glimpses of his weakness along the way. You see that he has the reputation of being Iron Fist Kettle, but then you see when it comes to dealing out punishments that he was very afraid to do it. And did that fear come from compassion, right? Like, did he not want to harm the children because they're children? Or was that fear in the sense of him not being able to take control of his farm and be perceived by those around him as somebody who wouldn't dish out a punishment? So is the perception of himself something that meant more than the children actually getting hurt? It wasn't him that ultimately made the decision. It was somebody else that suggested it. I believe it was Patar, and that was pretty much suggested to get Kettle out of the situation of needing to make that choice. And being able to make a choice and be decisive is something that you need in a leader, because leadership requires other people to rely on you. And Kettle is not a reliable person. Most of it is a fabrication. It's his perception rather than his reality. And he also does lead that perception of being that good, kind-natured slave owner. When it comes to Arneed, again, and I've been talking about this in previous reviews, yes, he is the best to her, but let's not forget, Arneed had a husband that she was torn away from. Kettle is obviously fine keeping her as his woman, basically making her his woman. Yes, he's good to her, but she doesn't even have the ability to refuse. She's a slave. So he might give her luxury, he might not make her work, he might, constantly compliment her, give her the nicest food, whatever all the resources that he has, but it's not her choice. She doesn't get to say no. And then, of course, there is the scene where Kettle is on her lap, sort of crying about the situation, being able to open up. He can't open up to anybody else because he's afraid to show who he really is. And so he uses Arneed as his sense of comfort. She's his comfort blanket, and but it's not her choice to be there, right? In the manga, I think one thing that might have been a mistake in the anime is in that scene to show Arneed fully clothed, not just because I want to see a nice pair of titties, but because I think having her naked also implies that Kettle sleeps with her on a pretty regular basis, probably every day, which of course, since she can't refuse, she can't say no, which is basically rape. And that's where she became impregnated by his child. And she is actually pregnant with his child. But and that makes the situation of this episode 100 times worse. So I think it shows that Kettle is afraid to stand on his own 2 feet and make his own decisions and decide and be decisive as a leader and tell people what's what on his farm, because he has this reputation to uphold, and he lives in constant fear. He lives in constant fear of how Torgil views him. He lives in constant fear of the other people on his farm, the old woman. He lives in constant fear of losing it all. And it's sort of like like the sword over Damocles story. Like, the more that you have, you think that would make you feel better, but you understand that you can lose it just as quick, or you understand that how long it might take to build, but you can lose it in just an instant. So it's sort of like there's always a sword hanging over your head. So he's constantly in this fear, and now part of his fear is coming true with what happened with visiting Canute and knowing that Canute is coming here to take his farm. So he's in desperate need of his comfort, right? Is that he's got that built up weakness, and he needs his comfort blanket. He needs to hold something. He needs to hug something. He needs to be able to release it. And I think that one of the things of weakness is that a lot of times you go in 2 opposite directions when you are too weak to handle something. Is that, number one, you either become a crying, blubbering mess on the floor and you just break down and it just all comes out at once, or that weakness kind of turns inward and you just become full of rage and hatred and you want to lash out violently. And he goes through both. First, he's going to become the crying, blubbering mess, but when he finds Arneed, he's going to be able to release, and then that's how he's going to kind of let out the anguish that he's feeling. But then he finds out that Arneed, while he's been gone, And obviously he believes that she belongs to him, and she's his number one slave. She's his force of comfort. He's the one that she's the one that he confides in. All of these things, and now he finds out that she tried to escape. But not only did she try to escape, she tried to escape with another man. And since he views her as his property and as his number one woman, that's like those are like two of like the absolute like worst possible things that could happen. Not only did she try to run away from me, but she tried to run away from me with another man. And that changes his sorrow of weakness into absolute pure rage. And when he finds Arnid, and this scene is really hard to read in the manga. I also thought it was really hard to watch in the anime, not from necessarily the level of like violence that you see, but understanding this moment and understanding everything Arnid just went through, and knowing that none of this really was her fault. She did let Garter go, but I mean, given the circumstance, understandable. And she is pregnant with his child, and that is like one of the most horrific parts of this portion of the episode, is because when he comes in there and like hits her with the stick, and she tries to plead with him that she's pregnant, Kettle, because of her perceived betrayal, doesn't believe that it's his child. He believes that she's just a whore. She's probably been sleeping with whoever for however long. There's no way to tell. There's no paternity test to take. That it's his child. So he just immediately assumes, because he's so mad at her, he's not even thinking about the situation. He's just mad that she's trying to get out of it. And then also to the point where she might be lying about the fact that it's his child, which makes her, a runaway, a liar, everything that he could possibly hate in this moment. And since he doesn't have the power to take that hate out on anything else, he takes it out on Arnid. And one of the biggest signs of evidence of weakness is when you lash out physically at somebody that is weaker than you and can't defend themselves. Arnid, not only is she his slave, viewed as property, a woman, has already been through a bunch of pain, anguish, and turmoil at this point. She's pregnant. All of these things, she is in a completely defenseless position. And he takes this moment to feel superior and to feel like he has control over something, and completely just beats her near to death. And it's a hard scene to think about, and it's a hard scene to watch. I think they captured it, I use the term wonderfully, not as in like wonderfully to watch, but like they really, really, sold the emotion of the scene. And so I appreciate like the anime for being able to capture that. And then of course we have the moment where Snake stops him and says, she is your property, and if you really want to kill her, I can't stop you, but I want you to take a moment to think about this. Like, is that what you actually want to do? And that is the worst part. But add insult to injury is, now that Leif Erikson is finally here, Leif and the other Thorfinn, Patar humbly asked Leif if, when he gets Thorfinn, will you please buy Einar and Arnid also? Will you please take them with you and get them out of here? And Leif actually says yes. And so, just moments before this, if there could have been a conversation, if they would have gotten there, maybe. But then Kettle also says, I'll sell Einar, but Arnid is mine. And so she is left behind. And then, of course, we're left in the cliffhanger of Arnid's condition, as well as Canute is almost there, and Kettle decides that he's going to go to war. Thorgil was already going to go. He was already going to rally the troops. Not that they even have that many. They lost 5 men with Garter, but he says, fuck it. The king, I don't care if you're the king, come try to take it. So he's just beyond the point of rage, and just needs to feel this dominance, needs to feel this control. And so he's here. He decides, I'm going to go to war. So he takes out his sword. Thorgil's ready to go. Thorgil's a monster. He's ready to go. The other farmhands, or the other, I should say the security, like Snake's men, are like, really? Like, there's not really a lot of us here that can fight, but that is the decision that was made. So now we are getting closer to the climax. Canute is about to dock, and a war is about to break out. Our need is not doing well, and Leaf is here. Now, the only thing I didn't like, and I didn't like this in the manga too, is that you don't see the moment where... I don't believe you see it in the manga. Let me double check, because I've been wrong about a few things. I don't believe you see the moment where Leaf and Thorfinn actually come face to face for the first time after this. I think it cuts right to Arnid in bed, not doing well. Yeah, I think it does the same thing in the manga. I'm pretty sure. But whatever. It is nice to see those two kind of reunited after all this time. You know, Leaf has been searching for Thorfinn for so long. He found him once, but then of course, you know, a lot of shit went down, and you know, Leaf didn't get to take him back to Iceland. So. Yeah, intense, incredible episode. I really loved it. And yeah, man, I can't wait for the rest of the season. We got 6 episodes left to go. 6 more weeks of Vinland Saga. I'm excited for it. So let me know what you guys thought about this episode down below. What did you think about that scene? And if you're anime only, what are your predictions moving forward from here now that you know the battle is coming? So let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Please give the video a like and a comment to help it in the algorithm, because it really will help me out. I appreciate it. Other than that, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon, channel memberships, merch store, all that linked down below. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.